Hello, everybody. I am Dre,
I am John.
and we are Voices in the Dark, where we're always learning how to human.
Yeah, ever trying, ever trying to be this human thing. Welcome back to the Modern Stoic podcast series. This is episode number 12.
We were quite far into it now. We selected some of the letters from Seneca to his friend Lucilius, who you've discovered is probably not a real person.
Well, so I knew there was some debate about this, and it looks like some people, or the scholarly consensus roughly thinks this was a device that Seneca used to kind of frame his work to be writing the letters. But we don't really know. We don't really know for sure because there's no clear evidence of Lucilius, but lack of evidence doesn't prove that he didn't exist.
No.
But the point is that it's useful for us and other people who've been reading it throughout the centuries ever since. This one is titled, although as ever we'll come up with hopefully a more exciting title, on philosophy and riches. This is kind of about the need to put your why first, Simon Sinek style, to find your mindset and your outlook before you do anything else. It's about avoiding becoming the slave to money in everything that you do, the swamp of accumulating possessions, how to do what you truly want to now rather than later, and how to make sense of Stoicism not as a prescription but as guidelines. Guidelines in a case of what to emphasize rather than thinking everything Seneca says is this is 100% what you have to do and nothing else. I quite like this one, but I think I've also got some trouble with it.
Okay.
Some annoyances with it, I think we will get to. So this is the first one we're recording of the new year.
Yeah, 2018.
Welcome to 2018. You're keeping the Daily Stoic Journal, as am I, which we'll talk about in a separate episode, New Year special episode, which we'll put out before this, I guess.
Yeah, or maybe at the same time. It'll be ahead of it chronologically, so check out the episode previous to this.
And that is shot, as is this, on our beautiful new sexy fucking camera.
Yeah, so you can check us out on YouTube.
And if you're doing that, hello,
waving, hey, everybody.
Waving. It makes us look so good. I wouldn't have thought high def would be good. You know, I thought it would be much worse.
The sensor is great, and the recording is a high quality format. But more than anything, it's the ability to use high quality cinema lenses. Makes such a difference compared to the tiny little piece of glass on the back of an iPhone. You know, even though the iPhone camera is fantastic these days, you can only do so much with physics.
Yeah, well, maybe you. Yeah, I can do anything I want with physics. So we will dive into this, but first, thank you to our Patreon supporters for continuing to support the show. We just put out a special exclusive episode for them, also on the fancy camera, and it's great because you look tiny and I look huge in it.
Yeah, you were sitting on your feet or something, or
I had my legs under me on the sofa, and it elevated me.
I look like a little dwarf next to you. It's very embarrassing.
And that's how I want it to be going forwards. Thank you to the people who support the show. We want to do this thing full time. We love doing it, and we really appreciate all the positive feedback that we get. If you can afford to support the show by chucking us $1 or more than $1, you can go to patreon.com/V&D. There are rewards and stuff. You can cancel anytime. We make exclusive content. We do little polls to ask what direction you want us to go in next. And you have a hotline to us and our attention. So that's nice if you can go do that. I think if we get to 50 patrons, we agree to do a shirtless podcast.
Yeah, we have. And now we can do it in high def.
Exactly. This is dangerous. We need to get in the gym. And if you don't have money to spare, that is also cool. Thank you for listening. If you can tell a friend who might enjoy the show, that helps. And if you could give us 5 stars on iTunes, that also really helps, especially as we've been getting on a few more high-profile guests. And when we ask guests, they go and see, what is this thing? Do people like it? Is it being rated? And that's the main thing they go and look at. We're saying we don't just want to talk to people because they have a high profile, but interesting people who can talk about interesting things, we do want to get in touch with. And interesting people don't tend to just go, oh yeah, I'll talk to anyone. You have to have to at least look like it's worth, get them in the door, because we know we're going to have a cool conversation once they're in the door, but that's the first step.
Yeah.
We started Instagram as well.
We did. A few cool pictures, some pictures of you shirtless.
Oh yeah, I forgot that. surfing, or having surfed. If it was me surfing, you wouldn't want to see that. Just just be a shot of a board floating on the waves and like maybe just an bubbles, arm. That's at v-in-the-d.pod because some fucker took at v-in-the-d.
If you're watching this, fuck you. Fuck your account.
So that's v-in-the-d.pod. We're over on Facebook, as you know, at v-in-the-d. And it's so tedious reeling those things off. But it's important because then people get in touch.
Well, I was looking at our stats for our podcast, by the way, you beautiful listeners. Only like 60% of you have actually hit subscribe. The rest of you are perusing without actually hitting subscribe. Subscribe, please. It's useful.
It's really useful for us. It doesn't make any difference to you, really.
Yeah.
You can always delete, unlisten the episodes. But with the new analytics stuff, you told me that, in fact, we can see that people, when they basically all listen all the way through every episode.
Yeah. Most of our listeners listen to quite a large portion of the podcast all in one sitting. Some of them come back to it later, but a lot of the average listen time is quite high compared to industry standards. So
I'm better than industry standards. Yeah, baby. Okay. Enough intro. I always feel like I gabble through it, and yet it still takes a few minutes. Let's talk about Seneca. The first quote that I highlighted is this: "Strive toward a sound mind at top speed and with your whole strength. If any bond holds you back, untie it or sever it. But, you say, my estate delays me. I wish to make such disposition of it that it may suffice for me when I have nothing to do, lest either poverty be a burden to me or I myself a burden to others." So fancy pants language for essentially saying, oh, no, but I can't do the thing that's actually important to me right now because I've got all these business matters, I've got financial concerns, maybe I need to pay off my credit cards, maybe I don't have a stable source of income. And once I've got all that sorted, I'm going to go and do this stuff because otherwise maybe I'll be financially fucked or I won't be able to look after the people around me and so on and so forth. So real concerns, but there's also here a theme of the issue of getting rich and suddenly having more responsibilities that I find quite interesting. Because we often think of, if you get rich, oh, you're suddenly free. And yet what tends to happen instead is that suddenly you expand like the goldfish to fill the bowl. And now, say you're some big film star and you've got a big mansion in a couple of places, that's taking up potentially as much of a chunk of your income as someone who has a much lower income and a small house.
So people tend to expand to roughly consume like the same percentage of salary or income that they would, like regardless of status. If you're only earning like 10 quid a month, you spend like 8, save 2. But if you're making 1,000, you spend like 800 and you save 200. Like it seems to be almost up to certain levels anyway. Most people will just expand how good their house is, what kind of food they do, what kind of entertainment they do, to quickly go back to not having anything.
Which, sounds like from the perspective of not having a big film star lifestyle, you're like, oh, it's all very well for you. But imagine if you experience that, or haven't we all experienced that at some point if we've made a little jump in our earnings and we think, oh, this is great, I can live the life, and yet you still have no money in your account at the end of the month. You're like, oh. And even more confusing is then you look back and go, how did I manage before? Because you kind of got out of practice of the realities of that. But we'll get back to this theme, I think, a few times here. But here, I think Seneca's highlighting the problem of making excuses before you make any move. There's always something you can cite, and it's not as simple as just becoming a nomad, as I have effectively, because I can say, okay, I'm not tied to any one particular place. I don't have my own fixed address and a lease and so on, but that doesn't mean that I'm free of everything. It's about the mental constraints. And I think a lot of people have this, that they still think, oh, I need a bit more to be able to do the thing that I want to do. Or I just need this other thing to do the thing that I want to do. And Seneca's saying, fuck that shit.
Just do it.
Do the thing that's important. Do the thing that's important. The mindset is the important thing. It's not about having lots of security. And if you have
Fair enough,
more possessions, do you have more security, or are you just worried about the possessions?
It depends on your mindset.
Exactly.
And if there are rich people that are poor, like they behave like they're poor. They treat it the same way. Like a truly rich person is weird in how it doesn't matter that they're rich. Like it reaches like a weird, and also especially with modern technology and so on, where you don't have to like Seneca makes the point of a poor person, when there's a fire, just runs out of the house, whereas a rich person tries to take their belongings. Like a billionaire, it doesn't matter his mansion like burns to the ground. He's got another 10.
Yeah.
So there is a point in modern technology now, in modern wealth, where that wouldn't be the case. I think what Seneca's trying to say is don't be middle class.
Don't be middle class, you're fucked.
It's an awful place to be. You're neither rich nor poor, so you can neither enjoy yourself nor be wise.
Oh dear. He tells us that we should try and be wise regardless of our status. Yes. He says that philosophy is not to be put off until later because it's an important thing in all things, from the biggest to the smallest. And I think often when he says philosophy in the letters, he's talking about what we're trying to do, find ways to be better humans, find a more centered place from which to live, and not just be running around at the mercy of our emotions and other people's judgment the whole time. And I think in relation to that, we can also think of our plans or the life that we want to live, as well as saying put philosophy first. Well, what about let's put our mindset in terms of what we want to do and the kind of life we want to live first. And the attitude of that, I think, is important to adopt even before we start. So if you have the outlook of, I am a traveler, I am an artist, I am a creator, then that helps frame everything else. So you're not going to be obsessed over, I need to have a stable housing situation. If you're like, I am a traveler, that's what I do. Or you're not obsessed over, I need to have a certain amount of, money in the bank or a stable job. If I am an artist, that's who I am and that's what I do. But it's a double-edged sword, because if you never actually put that into practice, then the mindset doesn't really mean anything. The classic thing that I fear being the writer who doesn't write. Because you can say you're that thing, but you actually also have to do it. But the mindset is important all the same, because if you don't have that, you're just, I think it's even worse. You're like, I wish I was a writer, but I'm not going to write, and I'm just going to go and work at Walmart. Don't know why I said Walmart, of all places.
This is hitting very close to home at the moment. As you know, but maybe our listeners don't know, I was working on a business deal last year to purchase 50% of a television studio. But the two owners, one of which was going to become my business partner, one of which was going to leave, decided to sort of be assholes to each other and take the legal dispute route. And the deal fell through, and I, at the very last minute, by which point I'd been kind of winding down my consultancy business. I'd let go most of my sort of, people I was coaching or mentoring, because this new business was going to take, like 16-hour days for a few months to sort of do well. And so I found myself in a weird position. I didn't have this 50% of a new business that was going to give me a steady income, and I didn't have my old business. And so I sort of struck a halfway deal with one of the owners, to stay on and continue to help, but without actually owning part of the business, because I didn't have time or resources to dedicate to restart, like searching for clients, rebuilding my sort of, consultancy. Like I wanted to get through Christmas.
Get through Christmas.
Without being constantly sort of on the phone and putting out ads on Facebook and that kind of thing. And I got through Christmas, and now it's the new year in 2018. And I made a decision today that I wouldn't get to the end of this month, which I thought I would.
You're going to kill yourself.
No, I am going to do what Seneca says. Don't wait. Don't wait for a less risky situation. Don't, there's no perfect moment or low risk moment that will allow you to do the thing that you want to do. Just do it. I'm going to do it. We have this new camera equipment. I have some new contacts that are going to help with client lead generation. and we're just going to make a go of it.
And then you're actually doing something, as opposed to being paralyzed in a situation which consumes all of your time and energy, like a 9-to-5 can consume and paralyze people who want to be doing something else.
Yeah.
Well, good on you, motherfucker.
Boom.
Because it's scary as hell. I mean, it's easy for us to chat about this theme, but think about an example in your own life, everyone who's listening, about where you're going, I'm just waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect moment, the perfect moment. And before you know it, at best, you've maybe, I got a bit of a promotion at work. I think I should stay or just take advantage of that little thing. You know, you're dying to do something else, but then you're not actually doing it. I hear this when people talk about, having a child. There isn't really a perfect moment to do that, because there's always something going to come along.
So you might as well bang your high school girlfriend right now, unprotected. Get her pregnant.
Yeah, that's what we're advocating.
We're advocating, teen pregnancy right now.
But the thing is that you can take the step, but it's not a guarantee. That's the point of... But it's the thing that people don't seem to emphasize enough, because all the stories that we have about, then he took an amazing risk and did the thing that would build his dreams. Well, you hear the success stories, you don't hear the failure stories. But I would rather fail trying to do something that was important to me than just kind of get by doing something I hated.
No, I agree.
Easy to say, difficult to do. Seneca adds essentially that riches can become their own obsession, that if you just obsessively try and get more and more and more, you kind of lose the space and capacity for developing yourself and learning. And that's certainly true. And I think if you're grinding away at something that's not really fulfilling you, where is the time to do anything new?
Yeah, no, I feel that so much of certainly the last year, but definitely even most of the time I spent at London Real, I was so focused on trying to build someone else's dreams, first of all, but spending so much time on marketing and figuring out how to growth hack and stuff that I kind of felt like I ran out of things to say about anything other than that. Like I wasn't loading my brain with philosophy or, new 4 years of power style things, or even just, nice new novels. Like I wasn't acquiring new information in my brain of anything other of something that I didn't want to be my long-term career.
This is how podcasts felt like such a godsend to me during a very dark, depressive period, because I was able to start learning new things all the time and be aware of other perspectives, people doing different things with their lives than just my immediate circle of friends and acquaintances. And sometimes I kind of feel that it's almost like a physical thirst, where I'm like, I need some new stuff in my head. Let's go and read a book, or go to an exhibition, and just have an interesting conversation with someone who knows about something I don't. And that's nourishment. And then you see that feeds into other things you do. Suddenly, maybe I'm trying to write something and I realize it's not that it's something that I didn't have like a speck or a germ of before, but suddenly there's new stuff that's catalyzing it, that's exciting, that makes it come out in a new way that it wouldn't have or couldn't have before. Everything through the lens of Game of Thrones when that's on. So you mentioned the next bit I'd highlighted about if the poor man runs out when there's a fire and doesn't lose anything, the rich man potentially feels like he loses everything. It sounds like it's all kind of an extreme disaster scenario, but...
well, back then, most rich people were rich in what they had in their house. Like an average patrician that didn't necessarily own large amounts of land, if his jewels and precious things burned to the ground, that's it. What else you got? Like, unless you're a landlord. So landowners, their land stays after their house burns down. But an average, quote unquote rich, which is really middle class, like if we think about it, once their possessions are gone, they have to rebuild from scratch.
It made me think of storage lockers. Need your help to empty that storage locker. I would like your help. I need your help. Which I've still had for a while. That it's a kind of hoarding thing that every time that I go and it's got so much smaller than it was, I open it up and go, what is this shit? And I kind of would like it to burn to the ground so I don't need to think of it. But every time you get close to your possessions again, you're like, oh, I do like that thing. Oh, I will get round to reading that. And that will come in handy one day. I definitely need that spare blender. You know, this kind of crazy shit. And there's a whole hoarding kind of mentality to it, which a lot of people have.
I read something interesting, like a hoarder, someone that like hoards things is essentially lonely or something like that. I can't remember where I read it. I read it like yesterday, I think.
Yeah? Don't tell my dad.
Oh, it might be in the emotions book.
Yeah? Hoarding. My dad doesn't throw away the boxes of any purchases.
It's a sign of being emotionally lonely. And I got to reread the chapter. We can have a look. It's in my emotions book that I've been reading.
There was an old TV show about hoarders. It was on the BBC, and like health and safety type people would go in and just, enter this fortress of mold and decay because they, had kept everything, like multiple washing machines for no reason, like endless newspapers. You walk through like a path carved through the detritus of things that they kept. And because they thought it was important, but they were definitely lonely people, isolated people. Yeah, it's an interesting theme. What I was thinking of here is about it really highlights for me directly when I look at that stuff, being attached to stuff that you can never truly possess anyway, because it could all just burn down. So it confronts me with my own sense of attachment to things. But it also made me think of, it's quite a contrast, well, it's related, but still contrast to certain tribes, and I can't remember the fuck they are now. I read a book about this where giving away as much of your precious stuff in a demonstrative fashion is shown to be the measure of your true wealth, because you can afford to give it away, and then you end up with nothing, and sometimes it's even burnt as like a symbolic offering or signification. I think that kind of gets to the heart of this strange little mechanism that you're like, the true wealth is the fact that I don't need this. I am beyond and above these material possessions, which we can value, and I have valued, and maybe you want, but I can give it away. And I think that we're often as humans really attracted to that, because it's largesse and generosity. And like even on a small scale, if someone buys a meal for a big group of people, I think that creates a lot of, liking and respect for that person, even if it's not like they're saying, I'm super rich. It's more like, look, I'm generous.
It even works for people that are horrible bastards. So Donald Trump is rich enough that he's gone bankrupt like 3 or 4 times or something like that. And each time he's been able to go to someone and go, lend me some money and I'll do this. And he started up again because you have a network. By that point, when you're rubbing shoulders with the other sort of kings and queens of the world, you'll never be poor, or hardly ever be poor, unless they turn on you like Bernie Madoff, sending you to jail, although, quite rightly so. Eventually Donald Trump couldn't borrow from US-based people and ended up borrowing from Russians, which is why he's in this current predicament.
The predicament of being president, mind you.
When he didn't really want to be, first of all, and second, to being a president that is in the pocket of Putin.
There you go. You get it. Maybe he is. I don't know.
It's pretty clear.
I don't think you can really be.
There's a couple of things that like hint at it, like including, so Putin, when talking about Donald Trump, uses the same language that the CIA would use when describing their what they call assets. It's the same kind of treatment, the same type of like. Although,
you've obviously been reading more about this than I have, but also that's a fun mind game from Putin potentially.
Oh, to try and instill that.
Yeah, because he would play that game.
But also, I've been following the Mueller investigation as much as it's publicly available, and some of the things that they're coming up with, they're definitely closing in on the fact that it looks like it was intentional collusion to try and get Donald Trump elected by Russian campaigns ahead of time. They had meetings with Russian ambassadors that weren't supposed to, because they weren't official government agents yet before that he was elected, and they lied about it intentionally, which is the important thing. it was bad that they had the meeting, but what is extremely bad is that they lied about it under oath, or and they try to cover it up and try to cover up the fact that everyone knew. It's like, oh, it's an accident, and they find out that it wasn't an accident, so they lied about that. So it's compounding a list, which makes it starts to make it into a criminal conspiracy as opposed to just a blunder. So it's really, really interesting. And I mean, it could still be all smoke, but it doesn't look like it.
Well, that's going to be really interesting. I need to come out of my news diet cocoon to read about that one, perhaps. That's pretty interesting.
I'm really quite a fan of this investigator guy. He was part of the FBI a long time ago. He left, and now he's back.
Oh, it sounds like a TV show. Like they brought him back out of
It's going to be so
retirement.
exciting. And he's someone that, which I can't remember which investigation he did years ago, and he was like relentless, and he got everyone involved, and so he's someone who gets their man. Like,
okay. The Bloodhound. So back to the letter, and I guess the key point, part of the key point is it's certainly easier to exit when you've not got much to lose. But I also thought briefly of Steve Jobs, that okay, he was incredibly rich, but he didn't seem to care very much about it. A fairly simple life in the everyday kind of sense. That maybe that's the sort of balance you could strike. Not that everyone's going to become Steve Jobs, but it didn't seem as though he was driven by an attachment to the income. No. He was driven by the dream.
Yeah, like a bit of... Well, it gets on slightly the mentally insane level of OCD, you know.
I'm not saying be like Steve Jobs, but maybe that aspect. Wear your turtleneck.
Depends, but we're talking about intent and things about in our episode about the resolutions. Mm-hmm. I think that Steve Jobs' way to not care about being rich is a different type of unhealthy. It stems from the wrong motivation as well. Just a different type of wrong motivation.
So it can come out well, but...
Yeah, it's still kind of a self-rejection, like an intentional violence against the self by doing stupid things just to prove to yourself that you're invincible, invulnerable, you don't need anything, including, going on a fruit-only diet and using homeopathy to try and defeat what was the only curable kind of pancreatic cancer instead of doing what we know kills it. Mm-hmm. And guess what? It made it worse.
He'd be dead.
He didn't have to be dead. He was one of those few people that when they get pancreatic cancer is almost definitely going to survive, but he did exactly the opposite of what he should have, and because he believed himself to be invincible and believed he knew better than doctors and all that kind of mentality that also made him do other stupid things, but also drove him to success.
Double-edged sword.
Yeah, it is.
Again. Shit, I had a thought. Now it's gone.
Ooh,
what did you do? Oh, yeah, I think I might read the Steve Jobs biography by Walter Isaacson, because I just finished Isaacson's biography of Leonardo da Vinci, which was really good. And I remember I read the intro of it a while ago, the Steve Jobs one, and Isaacson said that throughout his life, Jobs had this mixed sense because he was adopted. And he had this question to his parents at some point going, oh, so, I don't really matter? Like someone didn't care about me? And they're like, no, you don't get it. We chose you. And he went through the rest of his life, Isaacson thinks, with this mixture of feeling like he was like abandoned and not valued, and that he was chosen. This kind of duality of constantly trying to prove himself and believing himself to be God's gift. And it's an interesting kind of tension between those things.
Interesting.
I mean, it could be one of those things that's just neat to hang a narrative off, but maybe there's something to it. So Seneca, another quotation here, it's kind of back to the theme that's at the center of this, but I have some thoughts on it. Away then with all excuses like, I have not yet enough. When I have gained the desired amount, then I shall devote myself wholly to philosophy. And yet this ideal, which you are putting off and placing second to other interests, should be secured first of all. You should begin with it. You retort, I wish to acquire something to live on. Yes, but learn while you are acquiring it. For if anything forbids you to live nobly, nothing forbids you to die nobly. Right. I want to put aside the dying nobly. I don't think I'm totally down with that, because to me that's kind of an ego trip. Like, oh, look at me, I'm dying nobly. It's probably not quite what he means, but that's how it comes across to me. But I was thinking of a story I heard of a guy who kept, like, I guess working in a bank or some such thing, saying, "Oh, I'm gonna save up some money and then I'm gonna motorbike across China." And his friend's like, "Dude, you've got enough money to motorbike across China. It's fucking cheap." You know, he had the resources, but was putting it off because he was scared of doing it.
Right.
And you can try and make things happen, often just by trying to ask. Like, I had this experience recently with using GoFundMe. Thank you to anyone listening who donated to that, where our previous guest, Phil McKernan, invited me to come to a retreat over a weekend. He was like, "Okay, it's cheaper than most of the things that I do. I can get you a place," but the ticket was still basically £1,000. I'm like, "Oh, fuck." And your idea was, yeah, you're proud of yourself.
I'm very proud of myself.
Do a GoFundMe. And I did. And it's not quite at the full amount, but is basically there. GoFundMe take more of a cut than you would expect, though, everybody. A little bit much there. Admin fees on top of their cut. Anyway, that was pretty emotional. A kind of, shit, I don't deserve this stuff. Oh no, people putting money into this. I'd better be good on the outside. Our friend Martijn was joking with me about this. He's like, "Yeah, better be good. You've got shareholders now."
They're going to want their dividend of non-depression.
Yeah, we want to see a happy outcome all around. But the reason I bring that up is that I could so easily, and a lot of me wanted to, just go, "Oh, I can't do it. That's not possible." Even though I knew it would be important, I'm still scared to go because, as we know, McKernan is an emotional terrorist. It's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. And it was much easier to go, "Well, no one's going to give me any money. I don't want to ask anybody. That's terrible." To feel that I'm going to put people on the spot. One good thing about GoFundMe, I think, is it adds a necessary social link, another step, where it's not me coming to your face and saying, "Could you give me some money?" Because that's a lot of pressure. It's more just putting a little thing out there and people can go, "Yeah, I would like to do that." Or, "No, I don't think so." But it's not like they have to say no to my face.
Yeah.
But the why here is so much more important. If we can understand that, then more clarity comes, even if not more money. And if money's the barrier, then at least you have worked out a why rather than an unthinking accumulation of possessions which you think are somehow going to make you happy. Now, what's my next little note? I externalize my thought and then I have no idea what it is. I think I have to check the fucking notes. What I put was, is this a hard and fast rule though? I think like living the false life for the sake of starting a good one later doesn't make sense, because you could die anytime and that would be a terrible waste. You never did anything. But living a good life, even if it's a shit one in terms of everyday circumstances, at least you have that. So what's important to you? And also, who is judging as to whether it's good or bad or otherwise? If you allow society to judge and say you're not making it, or your parents saying you're not making it, that can hurt a lot. But if you are doing something that feels cool, even if you're suffering for it, I don't know. Like I want to just go, yeah, that's definitely the thing. But it hurts a lot more than people let on. It's a lot harder.
Yeah, it's not pleasant. Just there's a lot of things that we get taught, or we're learning, like from Stoicism or from these like more philosophical sort of approaches to life. But the assumption people make when they first come across it is that it's going to be enjoyable or good to do so. It's like, no. When you accept what you cannot change, it still sucks. It's not going to magically make you feel good about it. It's just about no longer feeling like it sucks and feeling like you might be able to change it only if, which gives you a complete different level of anxiety. By accepting that you cannot change it, you're still going to hate it and think about it and regret it, but in a very different qualitative way that allows you to move on to other things. But it still sucks. And this is the same. It's the same kind of concept. It's hard. It's not easy. Just because you have this framework to look at it stoically, it's not magically easy. Doing that thing that you're supposed to be doing, it's going to be hard. You're going to stumble. You're going to be scared. Like, it's still going to be full of those things.
We telescope this shit, so when we hear about, oh, J.K. Rowling was rejected by 20 publishers or whatever before Harry Potter sold, we're like, oh, and then we focus on the bit like, yeah, she was tenacious and she got there. Think of what the fuck she felt like during that period each and every time. She must have been like, I'm shit, I suck, this doesn't work, and then crawled out of that hole and went, I'm going to try it again because I really believe in this thing, and then gets punched in the face again in the process of it.
Think about the writer sitting maybe the next table over that was writing a book about Barry Cooper, the, I don't know, Dragon Boy. And, you know, he had 21 books that failed and we never heard of.
No.
You know, just because he was being stoic about it doesn't mean he succeeded. You know, like we know there's a success bias in learning from successful people and looking at people that persevere. Makes it look like perseverance is what you need. No, well, yes, you do, but it's not what made them successful. It's just what prevented them from failing. You still have to be good. Perseverance only means that if you're good, you might make it. It doesn't mean anything else other than that.
Oh, okay, deep breath. And Seneca emphasizes again, you got to have that mindset, or he's saying philosophy, I'm calling it mindset. You need to have that value system of what's important first. But another point to make, I think wisdom and personal growth are in your power regardless of cost, where you are financially. Because in this digital age, we have so much more access to the tools and possibilities for learning and growing than we did before. So if you've got an internet connection or access to one, you can find out so much. I mean, go over to... There's so many books you can read, where you go to a library or you go to some torrent site. Like, I've mixed feelings about those things some of the time. I like to buy things from creators that I really like the work of. But say if I really like the work of someone and their magnum opus costs £100, I can't afford that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, we're in this day and age. We're not millennials. What are we again? There's a name for us.
Zillennials.
Is it?
Between
horrendous,
wasn't it? Like Generation X and Millennials.
Okay. Eek.
Generation
Anyway,
Cool.
We don't got no money.
No.
Because salaries or remuneration for people of middle-ish or poorish classes has only gone up like 5-10% in the last 50 years, whereas profits for large companies and and productivity, by the way. So companies expect something like 1,000% more productivity out of people these days, which is possible thanks to computers and all sorts of other automation and things. But remuneration has only gone up 5 or 10%. Now, house prices have gone up like 800% or something like that.
Yeah.
And food has gone up. So even if you look up the minimum wage of someone in 1950, there was a minimum wage back then.
Mm-hmm.
And if you put it through in terms of like price parity, purchase capability compared to today, I think the American minimum wage was like the equivalent of, I don't know, $20 or $25 per hour. It's like,
Today.
yeah. So of course they were doing okay on the minimum wage. Now it's as if, even they wouldn't be able to live if there was a price parity. If you took today's minimum wage and wound it back to price parity back then, it would only be, instead of whatever, like let's say it was $5 back then, but if you compare it to today, it would be as if they were earning only $1. They would have struggled as well. So we're really fucked. And the expectation that we have to pay like ridiculously large amounts for entertainment so that some asshole can sit in Malibu and count his millions on the beach, like, okay, fine, like I'd like to pay you because you did something nice, but at the same time, I'm not stealing anything because it's infinitely replicable thanks to digital technology. I'm not taking anything away from you. Me making a copy doesn't hurt you. Mm-hmm. Because I wasn't going to buy it anyway because I'm broke.
Bottom line. Seneca says that we might say, but I'll have no necessities of life if we don't put in place our nice little comfortable job, income, house, and so on. He says, but the real necessities are fewer than they seem. Which made me think of Baloo the bear.
Bare necessities.
Simple bare necessities. And forget about your worries and your strife.
Yeah, we should watch that movie.
The new one's not so good, but the old one, classic. So the bare necessities, he says, if, however, I want to sing the whole thing, but I'm not going to. If, however, his means of existence are meager and scanty, he will make the best of them without being anxious or worried about anything more than the bare necessities. He will do justice to his belly and his shoulders. With free and happy spirit, he will laugh at the bustling of rich men and the flurried ways of those who are hastening after wealth, and say, why of your own accord postpone your real life to the distant future? So the bare necessities, I don't think we necessarily want to be living on the bare necessities, but as we get to in the next episode, if you challenge yourself to live on a tiny amount and as rough as possible for a day or a few days each month, you go, oh, I can handle this. On some of my travels where I've been staying in incredibly cheap, shitty, hostile kind of situations, and I've basically just got one set of clothes, whatever. Like, oh yeah, I can do this.
It's doable.
Actually, it's fine
for a little while.
Yeah, I don't want that to be the case all the time, but it really helps put in perspective the fear of like, oh no, I wouldn't possibly be able to live unless I was in a house and having 3 large meals every day. And
no, test yourself. Test like hard conditions to condition yourself, and know that you're capable of doing things. I now know I'm capable of working a 12-hour day job and then doing my own personal projects and other side projects for 6 hours.
But you'd rather not.
I'd rather fucking not.
I mean, that's kind of the core of a lot of our discussions of these letters so far has been, don't fetishize a lot of things. You can do these things that are out there, but you'd rather not.
So know that it's possible so that you're not constantly afraid or anxious, which is preventing action and risk-taking. But be aware that they do like suck.
Yeah, don't aggrandize them.
No.
So let's home in on this bit about postponing real life. That really hit me in that last quotation. But it seems to be what our society constantly tells us is what we should do. It's like, work hard and then you can enjoy your retirement. Right? Well, you don't really get to enjoy your retirement. So first of all, you might die, you might not get there. Second, it's unlikely there's going to be anything like retirement for people of our generation.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
No. So wouldn't it be much better if you were still working on stuff that was meaningful to you than some bullshit other thing? And thirdly, if you're really old, there's a lot of stuff that would be your real life you're not going to be able to do. You're not going to go and do that bungee jumping stuff that you wanted to. You're not going to have your motorbike ride across China if you're 80 years old.
But also, you will be soured and cynical. So the wonderful life-changing trip around the world that would have opened your eyes and made you a really fantastic 25-year-old to hang around with, when you're 60, you might just be like, it's not as good as Kent.
Fuck Kent. But what's even worse, I think, is that we try and have these little tasters along the way of having our holiday. That's a little taster of what we hope to have as our real life in this idea of retirement. And then we don't even get to enjoy it because Western culture also tells you to feel guilty about enjoying nice things. It's like, I feel like there's adverts and the media focused on do these wonderfully indulgent things. And if you do any of them, the people around you, or like your social groups or whatever, will be like, oh, all right for some, all right, oh, a bit of indulgence there, a bit of like a guilty pleasure complex instead of, wow, that's great. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Mm-hmm. I think it comes from I think it's Christianity at the core of it. Those Christian kind of morals, so-called, that have seeped into the culture.
Well, they've been codified and standardized and fetishized. But I think it's part of the human ape mind. Keeping things the same. Mm-hmm. Keeping your society, your tribe, and like essentially it's an expansion of the keeping everyone in the tribe, level. Mm-hmm. It has been exaggerated by religion, the Christianity in particular, but it is built into us, the idea of keeping everyone down at the level that we are at, because it's not so bad where we're at, right? Mm-hmm. But preventing them from growing too fast or too much, And it's kind of, there is bits of it, not in everyone, but it is something that is part of human nature.
I can understand that and some of the positives of that, rather than just being yay for the expropriators. But when it feeds down into the level of, yeah, we're going to tell you this beautiful life that you want and crave, but there's going to be no way for you to get it. And if you get it, we're going to tell you you're a dick.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to learn not to care.
My idea here is that in terms of what Seneca is saying, or in terms of how to live our life trying to aim towards something, is to take all of this as a compass and not as an iron rule, that we can orientate ourselves in this way and try to reduce the fear of loss. But also, I don't think we actually need to actively impoverish ourselves and not try to accumulate the energy that is money to do the cool shit that we want to do.
No. I'm firmly of the opinion that the aim of the game, like, there is such a thing as winning at life, and that you should try to strive for the top, like to achieve as much as you can, to grow as much as you can as a person, to make more money than everybody else if you can, like whatever it is that you want to do, like do it to the max and try. It's okay if you don't, like don't make it such a thing as going, crazy over not having done that, but aim for it.
Well, I think aim for what your win is. Like, I think everyone's going to have their own win. And I also don't think that there's a finish line here. I think what's good also to think about all of the content of this episode as a compass is you're walking in that direction. You're not going to reach it, because if you got there, there'd be something else anyway.
Well, there is a winning. There is a winning of the game, I think.
What's that?
The first human to reach godhood.
Okay. I think that happens. Like, that's what people call enlightenment.
No, I mean, like, actual omnipotence. It is not. It's theoretically possible to invent God, in terms of being able to be a quantum creature that, like, is one with the universe, but in a way that sort of has a direct conscious I mean, it's far-fetched, but that would be what to aim for.
I didn't agree to a series on quantum stoicism. I'm not taking this to the quantum.
It might be possible for us to transcend human life. That would be winning to me. Like, that would be the end of that particular game, and a new game would start.
Okay, I think. Okay, I can accept that as like the end of that particular game. Another game. I don't know if it's winning. It might just be concluding that particular part.
Yeah.
But I think if we're aiming to try and do all these positive things, if they are positive things, especially if it's based on improving our life experiences and those of other people around us, then cool. And Seneca's own life actually shows this in action, that he's got plenty of fucking money.
Yeah.
But he's not doing it for the money.
No.
He's trying to do other things, help other people, as well as, living his life. Although at this point he's writing all of these things in retirement. So
I would really like to know if he'd write similar things if he had to do 10 years of poverty instead of like 1 week every year.
I don't know. I think he would struggle. I mean, that's what I like about reading the journals of Marcus Aurelius, the Meditations, because he is struggling. He's the Roman emperor. He's trying to embrace Stoicism and live the life that he wants to live. But you see, he's wrestling with himself and all of his doubts and fears and ego in the pages of his journal. Whereas, and that wasn't meant for anyone to read apart from himself. So it's quite a different aspect than reading Seneca, where he's like, I have the wisdom, motherfuckers, come and read. So we have the Easter egg at the end, which is Epicurus. What a surprise. And the quote is, "The acquisition of riches has been for many men not an end, but a change of troubles," which I think links back to what we were saying at the beginning. And I think this is true even on smaller levels, that I can barely comprehend how I managed to live on so little during my student days. Like I said, we grow to fill the fishbowl and we start thinking that what were previously luxuries are now essentials. But then there's still a balance, I think, to be found, because if you think that you don't deserve to have and enjoy nice things at that level of like, no, I'm worthless, so it's actually objectionable for me to have a positive, nice experience because it clashes with my self-image, then you're also fucking yourself over. So I've spoken to, like, artistic people, been talking to Jamie about this, where there's this kind of reflexive idea that you, as an artist, as a creator, you can only ask for the tiniest amount because people will tell you to fuck off otherwise. And yet, at the other end of the scale, the ones hailed as great artists get insane amounts of money for it. But it's still the same sorts of creativity. And if you constantly sell yourself short, well, no one else is going to really help you unless you have a particularly benevolent patron figure who goes, no, I won't give you £5 for this. I shall give you £500 for this.
Unlikely.
Doesn't happen often, though. It does happen. So it's the why. Why are you doing this? If you're doing it for the money, it's not really going to work so well for you, I think. Because you're forgetting, like, where is the drive to actually make anything good in there? But if you're doing it like, oh, I'm so artistic and it's not anything to do with the wealth acquisition, I'm just above all of that, you're also a dick. Like, you're virtue signaling through that. I don't know where to find the balance. I think it's a case of constantly trying to find the balance.
Just do what you want. Try, like, I think there's such a thing as being self-critical and being philosophical about observing why you do things, and then there is overthinking.
Oh, my forte.
They're close. They're cousins, but they're not the same thing. Just put out your shit. Try to make it good. Try to be yourself, and hopefully it works out.
But I think I'm still into this freelancer rule. I can't remember where I read this recently, but it's like this mantra at a certain point. Whatever people say in response, you say, "Fuck you, pay me."
Yeah. Like,
and that's not, again, because you're motivated by money. It's the fact that if you want to be able to live doing these things.
Yeah, and so I've been watching the latest Netflix special, David Chappelle comedy. Mm-hmm. So he put out one special that was really, really fucking good. It was a double-header special. So there was like a show and then a mini show.
DP.
And then there's another one now. And in the previous special, there was hints as to his, like, I think 10-year hiatus or 5-year hiatus. So he had his own show, like a TV show, skit comedy, and then it didn't get renewed and he just disappeared and didn't get booked for anything. Now, it seems that he had a spat with high-level Hollywood people because he negotiated, I think, a 50% revenue deal for his show. And, like, whoops, without any expectation from the execs that it would actually make a lot of money, it made something like $500 million.
Okay.
And, you know, he went to a meeting with, like, well, you know, like, you don't expect us to give us the whole money, right? And he's like, yeah, we had an agreement. But thanks to perhaps some blackmail or something they had on him or whatever, he didn't get it. And they were like, no, like, either you say yes to this new deal or something. You know, we don't actually, I don't know what happened, but instead of being essentially their slave, like, it's a modern form of slavery, like being forced to take less than what you're owed because they hold all the cards.
Right.
He was like, you know what? Keep the money. And he didn't, like, come back. And he just went, like, back to his home and, like, didn't engage with them. They blacklisted him. They tried to prevent him from doing other work. But he walked away from, it was still going to be tens of millions of dollars purely out of principle. And that kind of fuck you, pay me, even though he didn't get paid, that attitude is what everybody should do. Because if we do it collectively, the power of collective bargaining, this is why unions, even though they can be terrible in some ways and people say we shouldn't have them, they're important, because otherwise it's just you against a corporation of thousands of people that has millions of dollars, or people that hold the billions even, and it's just you with your, you know, however much little income you have and maybe your shitty little lawyer. By banding with your other 100,000 people part of your company, or, you know, it makes a difference. It's important to all not cave in. When I was working for Apple and also for the Geek Squad, it was often that I would, like, sit down and give a lecture to someone that had agreed to work extra overtime for no money. Like, it's okay, I don't mind. Like, no, but you're undermining our ability to not want to do this.
That's right. You're not thinking about everyone in the process. A little side note story. One of the few instances where you as an individual can still have some power over some company that's trying to fuck you over is if you paid for it with a credit card and something has gone wrong, and then you can get the credit card company to go get my money back. So I had a wonderful experience at a foreign money exchange in London, in Hammersmith, in the Hammersmith Mall. Can't remember what it's called, Travel something or other. Don't go there. Where they had, I was buying some money for my trip to Morocco, and they told me the price. I said, okay, pay with credit card. They're like, yep, that's the amount, put it in, finished. And legally, that's the end of the transaction. It was all agreed and done. And then they tell me, and increasing numbers of people come over and increasingly rude and say, no, there's a credit card transaction fee. I'm like, well, I'm not going to pay it because I don't need to. You quoted me the price. I agreed. I paid. It's over. Pretty sure the law is on my side with this. They were intense and aggressive, rude. Eventually, very grudgingly, they agree. Perhaps because they know they're in the wrong. I don't know. They got a manager to sign off on this thing. So terrible bad grace on all their part. I leave. And then I discover on my credit card bill later in the month, they stole the money from me. There was a payment for all of like £3. So I was
They pushed it through?
They pushed it through and claimed there'd been a signature, and there wasn't. They committed fraud and stole money.
You could actually take them to court for quite a bit of money.
I think it would be a lot of effort. Well, we can talk about this off air. But and so I was like, fuck. You know, I can go back to that glass window and confront them, but I felt very, very powerless because if people are just saying, no, you can't do it without some sort of backup, what do? Thankfully, credit card type company I paid with, I called them and said they stole this money. They gave me the money back. End of story. Like, small victory. But what I really want to do is be able to go there and like wave it in their faces, throw them the V's, piss on the floor.
Take a shit on their desk.
Get swifty. That's what I want to do. Anyway, that's kind of a side note, but fuck me, that astonished me that they were so brazen.
Cool. They think they can get away with anything because you're just just a person.
Just a little person. But I've got a phone. I can call my credit card company. Anyway, let's finish with Seneca, and he's reflecting on that Epicurus quote. He says, just as it matters little whether you lay a sick man on a wooden or a golden bed, for whithersoever he be moved, he will carry his malady with him. So one need not care whether the diseased mind is bestowed upon riches or upon poverty. His malady goes with the man.
That's the quote for me for this letter.
The mind is the most important thing. If you are fucked up in the head,
you carry it with you to a new country. You carry it with you in a new relationship. You can't run away from yourself. You can try, but it won't work.
Everywhere you go, there you are. What's clear to me here is that this is a hierarchy of importance, that it's not that you have to say no to riches or possessions. It's just that they cannot be the most important thing. That is a malady. Yeah. That is an illness. What's most important to me, I think, are my friends and the space in which to do and make cool things. There's many ways to try and do that. I could live without much money at all. I'd rather not. But I wouldn't want to do any of it without my friends and the ability to create and do cool stuff.
Indeed.
Amen. And men. I want men. So on that slightly undermined finale, the next episode is on festivals and fasting, which is, I think, Tim Ferriss's favorite, or certainly one of his top ones.
I'm going to be for festivals.
Yeah? Not for fasting?
No.
No fasting. Okay. I hope you enjoyed this one, everyone.
Yeah, and come check our beautiful faces on YouTube, where you can see how sexy we are.
Yeah, and if you can hit subscribe on that, hit subscribe on the podcast. Those, bizarre as it may sound, those numbers matter in terms of us being able to grow and say, hey, potential people who want to come and work with us, collaborate with us, do cool stuff. We've got 1 million YouTube subscribers. 1 million YouTube subscribers. That's really awesome. We'd rather not do it by just gaming the system.
Yeah.
Just read an amazing article about a guy who became the #1 rated restaurant on TripAdvisor for London, for a restaurant that didn't exist, just through gaming the system.
Nice.
I might put a link to that in the episode notes. It's a funny story, but you can do a lot of stuff by gaming it. But it doesn't. It's kind of a paper. Can you say paper tiger? Is that what it is?
Don't know if it quite works this way, but yeah, I get what you're trying to say.
It's bullshit.
Yeah, it's not really
Paper
real.
thin. And we're so real. #real. New year, real you, motherfuckers. I'm rambling. Please end the episode.
All right, we'll see you for the next letter. But until then, please be silly, be kind, and be weird.